10, I'm waiting for this one to be made in some kind of like epic, sexy, ancient Roman spy movie because starting at number 10 we have Mistress Marcia. Mistress Marcia was responsible for the demise of Roman Emperor Commodus. But not only was she his assassin, she was also his most favored concubine. Talk about keeping your enemies closer, eh Marcia? Marcia Aurelius Chionia Demetrius, along with most of Rome, wasn't a fan of this great leader. He was arrogant, would kill off his officials randomly, and tried to rename Rome after himself. But Marcia was skilled at managing his temper and even convinced him to release the Christians sentenced to labor in the Sardinian mines. But in 192 AD, Commodus wanted to appear next to the gladiators instead of the traditional place all rulers took in the palace. Marcia tried to convince him how much that would offend Rome, but Commodus took that as a slight and instead of brushing it aside, condemned her to death the following morning. Overreaction. Enraged, Marcia leapt into action once she discovered his plan. It was typical of the mistress to feed the emperor wine after his bath every night, so she enlisted the help of 2 conspirators and poisoned the cup. Unfortunately, it only made him violently ill and not dead, so they paid an athlete to strangle him to death. Marcia then married her fellow slave and lover Eclectus before they were both caught and killed a year later for the crime. Still, took him a year to figure it out. Not bad, Marcia. Julia Tofana. This next woman found a deadly way to help young maidens escape unwanted marriages. Back at a time when women had no social or financial protection if they did not have a man beside them, many young ladies were used as pawns to negotiate wealth and status for their families, even unwillingly. Which meant many had no protection should they be trapped in an abusive marriage, which is where our home ec assassin comes in. Born in Palermo, Italy, Julia sold poisons that were effective in helping divorces come along by, let's say, natural causes. Though not much is known about the woman herself, Julia would become one of the most famous hitwomen in history for providing a poison called aqua tofana. Disguised as a necessary tonic for women to use, the substance was a combination of arsenic, belladonna, and lead, all of which were actually found in makeup. Oops. Belladonna was used to expand the pupils so women would look more alluring, for example. But aqua tofana was the perfect tasteless and odorous concoction to pour into husband's end of the day ale. She kept a steady business for 50 years, long enough to involve her daughter before she was discovered. One of her clients apparently had second thoughts before pouring her husband some soup, and that eventually revealed the scheme. Julia killed over 600 men before the death of her and her accomplices. Coming in at number 8, Charlotte Corday, the assassin of Marat. If you paid attention in history class, you know how bloody and ruthless the French Revolution was. Heads flew everywhere, the prisons were filled with nobles, rioters filled the streets. Needless to say, it wasn't a great place to be, but Charlotte Corday had a mission. Charlotte was a passionate supporter of the revolution, even though its main conspirators were set on killing the likes of her. Charlotte was, after all, a noblewoman, though she opposed the reign of terror. There were 2 sides to the fray, the Girondists and the Jacobins, and Charlotte fought along the first. But the Jacobins were radical and tried to kill any and all oppositionists, the Girondists included, which is why Charlotte decided that Jean-Paul Marat, leader of the Jacobins and journalist, had to get the hell out. You gotta admire her gumption, man, because she just stormed in while this guy was taking a bath. She bought a knife, disguised herself as an informant, and went in to speak to him. At first she delivered on her offer and told him of escaped Girondins, but he had once said that they should be guillotined, so she whipped out her knife and ended his bath time once and for all. Corday knew she was going to be caught, however, and had told not even her family of her plans. Charlotte was guillotined on July 17, 1793, with her name attached to her dress so she would be recognized. She wrote in a letter explaining her actions, "I desire only that my head carried through Paris may be a rallying standard for all the friends of the law." That's commitment right there. Next up, at number 7, we have Idoia Lopez Riaño, also known as La Tigresa, the Tigress. Man, wicked names. Make it so hard not to think they're bad. I mean, they killed people. That's bad. The Tigress was a leading commander in a deadly political group aimed at earning independence of the Basque region of Spain. The group was responsible for the death of 800 people in the years before it was disbanded in 2018. She was responsible for planting a bomb in the center of Madrid in 1986, killing 12 police officers. After killing 5 more police a year later, at aged 22, La Tigresa made it onto the most wanted list. But what's even more disturbing was her tendency to seduce the police she killed before the bombings took place, even killing their colleagues across multiple days. When she was finally caught in 1994, she accumulated a sentence of 2,000 years in prison. However, she was released only 23 years later after several apologies and quitting the ETA. She is now studying to be a journalist. Okay, makes you wonder, does that count as getting away with it? Coming in at number 6, Brigitte Monhop. Brigitte Monhop was known at one time for being the most evil woman in Germany. She killed over 9 people throughout her involvement in the West Germany far leftist terrorist group, the Red Army. In fact, she ran it. She became the head of the RAF after its 4 previous leaders were caught and committed suicide in jail. They orchestrated a reign of terror across West Germany in 1970s, killing over 30 people, with Brigitte being responsible for 9. She was known for her extravagant murder attempts and her cold and calculating behavior. Once she even handed a bouquet of flowers before shooting them point blank in the face. She was finally arrested in 1982 and, like Rihanna, was supposed to spend life in prison. But to the country's surprise and horror, Brigitte was released on parole in 2007 at the age of 57. Monhop has never shown remorse for any of her victims to this day, but she keeps a low profile. Next up at number 5, we have an assassin who continues to work to this day, but for the other side. Kim Yeon-hui was just 19 when she was handpicked at her university to become a spy for the North Korean government. Her mission? To disrupt the Seoul Olympics in 1987 and show the world that South Korea was too dangerous to be a host. How? Well, after training for years as a spy, when Kim was just 25, she boarded a Boeing passenger plane and stored a bomb in the overhead compartment. Her and her assumed father got off at Abu Dhabi, but the bomb was detonated before it reached Seoul, killing 115 people. She says that her mission was personally assigned by Kim Jong-il, and it was to help prevent South Korea from becoming more powerful than the North. She was brainwashed into thinking that this mission was for the sake of uniting Korea, and this was the very reason the president of South Korea pardoned her. Hyun-hee and her partner were intercepted and caught in Bahrain, but she didn't have time to use the cyanide like her partner did. She confessed after a week of interrogation. Today, she is married to a former South Korean spy and is the mother of 2 children. She is now trying to warn the world not to trust North Korea's current leader, Kim Jong-un. Due to the information she has shared, Hyun-hee thinks she's on the list to be assassinated next. Coming in at number 4, this is another one that needs to be a movie. Oh wait, it is, called Hidden Man. This is a tale of epic proportions of honor, struggle, but most importantly, for this video, vengeance. In 1911, China was in turmoil while many local warlords were trying to fight for power. Shi Qianchao's father, who had fought in the wars leading to the fall of the empire before, was captured and killed by a rival warlord named Sun Chuanfang. That day, his fate was sealed. She plotted for years and finally set the date for November 13th, 1935. After the warlord retired, he became a Buddhist at a temple in Tianjin, and she followed pistol in hand. Posed as a dedicated follower, she waited until everyone in the room had their eyes closed before she shot her father's killer. She then scattered letters and a photo of her father to assure everyone in the room that her task was complete and that she would not hurt any of them. The media caught wind of this assassination and swept up her name following words such as courageous, brave, and her case saw 3 trials before she was pardoned in 1936. I guess the public loves a good revenge story, but of course, who doesn't? That's why you're here. Coming in at number 3, we have La Tosca, another bad name lighting up the list. Maria Lopez, also known as La Tosca, was caught after completing 20 murders by the time she reached only 26 years old. She was reportedly paid $1,700 a month by the infamous Mexican drug cartel Los Zeta to complete her hit list. Los Zeta are allegedly responsible for over 14 drug-selling hotspots in Monterrey and are currently battling the Gulf cartel for territory. Until her arrest in 2012, La Tosca was responsible for hitting rival traffickers and any police officers that got in the way. She's also accused of leading a criminal cell responsible for even more crimes, including torture and carjacking. Though she definitely isn't the only female assassin involved in the cartels, she is yet to be topped for number of kills. Coming in at number 2, we have Jeanette Van Nessen. We cannot have a list of top 10 female assassins without talking about Jeanette Van Nessen. But before we do, remember to tell us you like us by pressing that thumbs up button. Now, especially over COVID, many of us may now be familiar with freelance work, but hopefully not this kind. Jeanette worked as a freelance assassin charging 80,000 euros per hit. Most of her kills took place in South America, but unfortunately for her, she took one hit too far. She was hired by the Black September organization to kill an Israeli intelligence agent named Carl, which she did after she seduced him. But unbeknownst to her, as soon as she did, she put a target on her back. Avner Kaufman made it his own personal mission to take her down and eventually cornered her in her boathouse along with another agent. But she wasn't gonna go down that easy, and she slipped off her robe in an attempt to seduce Avner. But then the charade shattered when she reached for her gun. Bang bang, they shot her down and she died holding her cat. I just think that's great. If you want to see a dramatic presentation of this scene, just watch the film Munich, directed by Steven Spielberg. Coming in, last but not least, number 1, Freddy and Truce Overstegen. Who says the best assassins work alone? No assassin I've met, that's for sure, mostly because I haven't met any. that I know of. Sister duo Freddie and Truce Overstegen fought back against the German occupation during World War II and never revealed how many soldiers they killed. When the war was about to begin, their mother took in Jewish refugees and hid them in their house. Soon the two girls, then later along with their friend Hani, took a more deadly approach to resistance. Freddie joined the Dutch resistance when she was just 14, soon followed by Truce. In the 1940s, when the Netherlands were invaded, the three girls took on the role of ambushing and seducing SS soldiers and their Dutch collaborators straight to their death. Soon the teens began to take on shooting missions by themselves. In 1943 they met Hani, who dropped out of school when she refused to sign allegiance to Germany. All three of them became excellent shooters, but Hani was captured just 3 weeks before the war ended. Her last words apparently were, "I'm a better shot," when her executioner only wounded her. Both Truce and Freddie survived the war and both died at the age of 92 in 2016. It was only after their deaths that they received national recognition. After all is fair in love and war, and these two women helped fight a war that would haunt generations to come.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Richard Iceman Kuklinski. Richard Kuklinski got his nickname in the most gruesome way possible. He became one of America's most prolific killers after being hired by the famous Five Families in New York City. He had around a 30-year career as a contract killer, and while he only ended up being charged and convicted for 4 killings, he had claimed that the number was actually closer to 250. While we think of what an assassin would look like, he may not be at the top of the list, which may partially be what helped him be so successful. While he killed his victims in a multitude of ways, he was dubbed the Iceman due to the fact that he froze all of the bodies. This was to ensure that the coroners would be unable to determine their true time of death, which is both clever and especially evil. Richard ended up passing away in jail in 2006. In our number 9 spot today, we have Giuseppe Pino Greco. Giuseppe Greco is incredibly notorious for the role he played with the Sicilian Mafia as one of their hired killers. He played an extremely significant role in the Second Mafia War that took place in the 1980s, where he carried out dozens of killings. He is known for using his favorite weapon, which was an AK-47, which truly gives us an insight into just how gruesome his crimes really were. He was a high-ranking member of the Mafia, but he enjoyed getting his hands dirty and ended up leading what were called the Death Squad. He ended up being killed, as can be a common thing in that line of work, and his body was actually apparently dissolved in acid, which is all kinds of messed up. He ended up still being sentenced to life in prison in absentia after his passing for 58 different killings. It definitely takes a lot for them to still try you after you pass away, but I think 58 killings is probably a fair reason to do so, and remember, those are just the ones that are publicly known. In our number 8 spot today, we have Glennon Engelman. Glennon Engelman was actually a dentist, but also a contract killer, which is quite a combination, and has probably made a few people just a little more scared of the dentist. Over the course of 25 years, Glennon lived his double life, but it wasn't in the same way as a lot of the other men on this list. His first killing was in partnership with his ex-wife, of all people. She had married another man and raised his life insurance. This is when Glennon killed him, and the pair split the earnings. This is the kind of format he used for the rest of his killing career, and while there's no normal way of being a career criminal, this is certainly quite dark. He committed at least 7 of these crimes, but there is a chance there are more that we don't know about. It is also believed that there may have been a few he committed for no monetary gain at all, and it was purely for the thrill of killing. He was in jail serving 2 life sentences when he ended up passing away in 1999 at the age of 72. He was being treated for diabetes, and it is thought that his death is related to that. In our number 7 spot today, we have Abe Kid Twist Relis. Abe Relis was a hitman for Murder Inc. during the 1930s, which was an organized crime group. He is known for being one of the most heartless killers they had, which is a title no one should ever want. He was known to use an ice axe on his victims, as well as just being pretty psychopathic. Like, he attacked a worker at a car wash once for not getting a smudge on the fender of his car, or the time he killed a parking lot attendant for not getting his car fast enough. Think about the worst Karen you've ever encountered and make it 1,000,000 times worse. In the end, after being found out, he turned into a state's witness, but you know what happens to those. Of course, the night before he was supposed to deliver his evidence, he was just miraculously thrown out of a window. In our number 6 spot today, we have Vincent Mad Dog Cole. Vincent Cole was a hitman for the mob in the 1920s and early 30s. He worked primarily for the mobster Dutch Schultz, but after some disagreements, he ended up forming his own gang. He was known for being ruthless, but also for kidnapping. After forming his own gang, him and his former boss were in a long battle with each other that saw the lives of many of their men lost, including the life of Vincent's older brother. In the end, on February 8, 1932, at 12:30 a.m., Vincent was at a telephone booth when two men stepped out of a limousine and opened fire with their submachine guns. This, of course, killed Vincent immediately, but the ones who did it were never caught. In our number 5 spot today, we have John Childs. John Childs is famous in the UK, but not for the best of things. John is known for doing some pretty gruesome things to his victims, but the most insane part is that none of their bodies or the weapons he used have ever been found. He also was able to implicate 2 separate accomplices for his crimes, who both ended up serving more than 20 years in jail for the crimes that he committed. So it's clear he truly wasn't the best man around. He ended up confessing to his crimes and has been sentenced to life imprisonment. In our number 4 spot today, we have Fred Burke. Fred Burke was a man who actually worked for Al Capone. He is known for his role in the Miraflores massacre that took place in Detroit in 1927, but he's probably better known for his role in the Valentine's Day massacre of 1929. This was when he and some other associates lured some gang members of the Moran gang into a garage, where they then dressed up as police officers and ended up killing these gang members. After this extremely gruesome day, he carried on with his career of committing robberies and the occasional killing, but he made a terrible mistake. In December of 1929, he was a little intoxicated and very paranoid one night when he got into a small traffic accident. A patrolman named Charles Skelly showed up to the scene, and this is when Fred ended up shooting and killing him for essentially no reason at all. This started a huge manhunt, and he got away for a little while, but in March of 1931, a resident in his new town recognized him and ended up calling in a tip. This led to his arrest and subsequent life sentence. He ended up passing away from a heart attack on July 10th, 1940. In our number 3 spot today, we have Christopher Dale Flannery. Christopher Dale Flannery was better known as Mr. Rent-A-Kill, which is horrifying. He was Australia's most notorious hitman. He started out working as a club bouncer, but was bored by that job, so he moved into contract killing, which isn't necessarily the usual progression of those things. Authorities have said that his first killing was that of the barrister Roger Anthony Wilson, and there are some pretty scary details surrounding that, which I will not go into today. In 1985, there was an attack on his house and family that miraculously left them all with only minor injuries. Not too long after this attack, Christopher received a call for a meeting. He went to start his car, but was unable to do so. The person he was meeting with then told him to take a taxi, which he did. Once Christopher got into this taxi, however, he was never seen again. He was of course presumed dead after his disappearance, but we really never have found out what exactly happened to him. In our number 2 spot today, we have Alexander Solonic. Alexander Solonic was known as Alexander the Great, but I'm not sure if great is the word I would use to describe him. He was a Russian gangster who was a pretty notorious hitman for the Russian criminal world, which sounds like the scariest place on earth. He started out as a member of the Soviet army, but he was kicked out quickly for his violence towards suspects. He actually ended up in prison for some of the things he did. After 2 years, he ended up escaping, and this is when his contract killer career started. After a few years of living his life, he was apprehended by the police. Once at the station, he revealed a small automatic weapon that they had failed to find on him, and he opened fire on the officers. He ran outside where he hit 2 more officers, but he ended up cornered and hit by a shot himself. After being jailed for the 2nd time, he ended up escaping from prison again, and this time he disappeared. He was later found in Greece with a fake passport, and it was here where he started his own little gang of around 50 men, which were of course involved in shady activities. In 1997, however, his body was found just outside of Athens, and this time the tables had turned and he was someone else's victim. Authorities found evidence that he had been hired to carry out a hit in Italy before his death, and these 2 things just may have been correlated. In our number 1 spot today, we have Bernard Hunwick. Bernard Hunwick was nicknamed Barry the Bear and is one of the most infamous hitmen from the 80s and 90s. He apparently has committed somewhere close to 300 killings, which is an absolutely horrendous amount. He apparently led a group of 6 who were known for killing drug smugglers and the people they worked with in exchange for cash, of course. Despite his extensive list of crimes, he was only ever charged with one killing, which was that of smuggler and bail bondsman Richard Diego Messina. He ended up being found when an accomplice of his turned into an informant, and he was caught planning the killing of an undercover FBI agent who was posing as a drug dealer. He was sentenced in 1999 to 2 life sentences after pleading no contest, and he ended up passing away in jail so recently on January 2nd of 2013 when he was 67 years old.